Hello and welcome to Reanimated. We've been off the air for a little while, but we're back. Never fear, gentle listener. We will return just like the undead.
I don't know if I'm full. I might be half undead right now. It's possible.
Yeah, it's been a rough summer.
Tis been a rough summer, but I'm happy to be here today talking to you. It's honestly kind of a relief to hear your voice, Stuart Tiffin.
Yes, hi, I'm Stuart, and that's H.A. Conrad, and we are Reanimated, and it's episode 298-ish. And today we're finishing up the long-delayed end of season 2 of Black Summer. And then there's a lot to get on with this summer because we're slacking. There's like Walking Dead's coming out. We got Ashen of the North to talk about.
Yep.
I really want to talk about Blood Red Sky.
Yep.
And a few other projects. So there's so much for us to do. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, I'm sort of anticipating maybe a little blip in the next couple weeks, but then I think we'll be back on track for September, hopefully. And then we can, do some of these, go back to our previously scheduled podcast or our previously scheduled recording schedule. Anyway, as you can tell, I'm a little bit tired. This is true. But I will say that I recommended Black Summer to a friend of mine, and they had seen sort of the ads and stuff, and he's into the zombie stuff like you and I are, Stuart, and he was looking for stuff to watch, and I'm like, oh, have you seen this? And he's like, oh, I thought it was like Z Nation. And I'm like, no, just check it out. And I got this text from him in like the middle of the night because he had basically binge watched the seasons and was just totally on board with it. So I will say, I think that we're not the only ones who really loved what they did with this. And if you haven't yet watched these last two, the season finale, obviously we're going to go into a ton of spoilers. So you have your warning. And I think we only have like one real tidbit. There isn't a ton of news right now, as is.
But I want to talk a little bit about that Black Summer reference you made. I thought that was Z Nation. I honestly feel like that has hurt this show.
Agreed.
I mean, and it is John Hyams was the creator of Z Nation also. And I don't really understand how he feels like there's a through line between the two shows because they're about as different as night and day.
I don't know that they could be any more, like even the whole feel of it is very different. And that's actually what my friend said. And again, like us, he watched, I think he did not get into Z Nation. He gave it a good try. Actually, I think he got further into it than we did, and then just couldn't do it any longer and said it was like, he's like, it's almost like it kind of like, it was trying to do one thing, but it just missed the mark in terms of the tone. So that really turned him off to watching this. But then when I said it, I'm like, no, you should really check it out. It's very different. And even said the same thing that you just did, which is that he doesn't even, he thinks that they should totally dissociate from that show just for that exact reason.
I mean, the marketing material for Black Summer was basically like, this is a prequel to Z Nation. And yeah, maybe, but it's still just, God, that was a disservice.
Agreed.
This is not a perfect show, but it does have a perfect 100 rating on Rotten Tomatoes for the season 2.
It's not perfect, but I will say, and I'll repeat what we have said all along, is that the storytelling, the editing, the filmmaking is really much better than it has any right to be, honestly. And it's good. So, and to me, really one of the most enjoyable things I've watched this summer. In my summer of darkness and work. But it's so I just think it's a really enjoyable thing for anybody who's into this genre. So still highly recommend it, and still recommend it, especially I actually kind of loved the finale too. Although I have, a few things to chat about here.
Well, we'll get to the finale in just a little while, but we do have that one piece of news, which is significant. There's actually a lot of other stuff out there we could talk about. We're choosing not to. But Day of the Dead is an upcoming series on Sci-Fi.
Or Sci-Fi.
Coming out in, yes, as HA insists on calling it, Sci-Fi. The Day of the Dead series, though, it looks real. There's a trailer. You can watch it on YouTube. I think it's actually, like presentation wise, it does kind of feel and look like a Romero project in a way. But it also looks like it's been modernized and it's got humor.
Yeah, and I mean this is supposed to be out in October, mid-October, so definitely
Mhm.
kind of like that sweet spot. It makes sense. That's actually a really good premiere date for, for this kind of show. You've got
Yeah.
Halloween season and all that kind of thing. They announced this like back in February, and it basically the order is for, I think it's like 10 episodes, from what I understand. And then these, they have the cast, but there's not like a ton of information. I mean, the trailer looks pretty cool, so obviously we're going to check it out. I'm curious about how they fill 10 episodes, but it's as far as I know, it's kind of within like the first 24 hours of like a zombie apocalypse, right? So
Those are always fun
it's
times.
always fun, but 10 episodes of that seems a little long, but we'll see. It could be
I
amazing.
mean,
I'm
Black Summer has basically been the first several hours of, well, not first, but several, each season is a fairly short
True.
chronological period of time. It's possible to do this, but you've got to, I
Gotta do
mean,
it
you got to
well.
have that scalpel.
So we'll see. But I'm excited to see this, and the cast looks great. So let's wait and see what happens with this.
Yep.
I'm curious if it actually hits the date, because there hasn't, other than this trailer, there hasn't actually been a ton of stuff about it. So
Yeah, but the trailer only just came out in July.
true. So
So there's plenty of time. There may be another teaser between now and October, but I don't need another trailer to know that I'm going to watch
of
this.
course we're
So
gonna watch it. I mean, there's no question.
yeah,
So like, who are we kidding? But so we'll add that to the pile of things that we need to review. Good thing it's waiting till October so we can catch up a little bit.
I mean, yeah, you say that, but we've got like 30 episodes of
Yes,
Walking Dead Prime to get through.
I know, I
Not that
know.
they're all happening between now and then, but it's going to be a busy time.
It is, but you know what? After Labor Day, I've got a lot more time on my hands. You probably don't though. So because then
I'm just waiting for a fire to start.
it's fire season for you then. So
It already is. It has been. I mean, it's bad out there.
yeah. So
But let's kick into Black
so
Summer
before
season two.
before we jump into this, I will say
Okay.
that last night on my way home, as I was dragging myself back to my apartment, they were apparently filming on on our street with this like massive like rain machine and like cherry pickers and all this kind of crazy stuff.
Whoa.
And they're doing a movie of Corduroy, the
The
bear.
bear?
And so they had everything blocked off and whatever. And all I can say that just even seeing this small sliver of whatever they were doing just took hours and hours, and they were still doing this all through the night pretty much.
Oh God.
Filmmaking is no joke. So I will say, just watching what was apparently just one scene in the movie or whatever it was that they were doing took like probably, and they had started at 6 a.m. apparently to start even setting all this stuff up
Yeah.
yesterday. So just again, hats off to the people that do these things. And for Black Summer, just even imagining the logistics of filming in the woods and filming in
In the winter.
pretty
Yeah.
brutal weather. I have to this is just a really well done series. So just putting that out there.
On to that note, I was listening to an interview with Kelsey Flower, who was Lance on this show, mostly in season one, a little bit in season two. And he was talking about how he got cast for season one, which was kind of like he knew a guy who knew a guy, and he's been working on his acting network for 10 years and was very psyched to get on the show, and was told by the casting director, hey, dude, cardio.
Yeah.
And because he was like, basically any scene where you saw me running flat out, that was probably the eighth or ninth or 10th take
Yep.
of me doing that day. And he talked about how grueling that was as an experience. And you could definitely, I mean, I feel like it comes across, especially in the season finale, the guy who plays Mance. That is I don't remember how many minutes that scene is, but it's holy crap.
Yeah.
The dude's going flat out.
And I think you and I actually talked about this in the first season, because the Kelsey Flowers is, if you add up the amount of times he's running, in the series, it's like almost every time he's shown at some point, eventually he's
Yeah.
running.
Unless
So
he's high on like heroin and like laid out flat, he's basically running around.
right.
Yeah.
So, I think yeah, for all of these actors, and especially this season even more so, it felt like everybody was running a lot all the time to some extent. And aside from that, just the choreography of some of the scenes, especially the one I'm thinking in particular is when they all get into the house, when the different groups get into the house with like Sun and they're
Oh, the big shootout.
yeah, like that one was totally just the choreography, even like shooting it from the different perspectives and then coming into the
Yeah.
house. Like how many times did you actually have to do that to get it right?
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
just boggles the mind. So
It absolutely does. Yeah. But of course, if a movie versus TV, the movie has the luxury of making that, doing those shots, extra few times. TV, they don't necessarily have that budget.
no,
And I've heard Ty Frank talking about that with The Expanse and how that is different between
yeah,
film and
it's
television.
true.
And the Expanse is another beautiful show with a lot of effects that they have to kind of get right in fewer chances than they might have if they were on in Hollywood or on a big studio. But should we start with the lodge?
Yeah, let's do it. Let's get into it.
So the last time we left our heroes feels like, well, it was a long time ago in the real world. It was just like a few minutes ago in the show. uh Rose, Anna, and we didn't know his name then, but his name is Boone, and he actually gets called Boone once in this episode. They're running toward this hotel or this lodge, this ski lodge. He's laughing, he's shrieking, he's a very loud, happy person. Is Boone, and this episode starts with them arriving there. And I actually found out where this place is. It's got a
Well,
website.
I mean, look, I think this whole episode, but even from like the beginning, is really, there's a lot of hotel overlook vibes, and that kind of
Oh God,
continued to be the same with it throughout this entire episode.
yeah, this episode's super psychological.
And even how things were filmed was very much, I think, an homage to that specific horror genre, just with the way that the different film work was done, especially with Anna's character, and just even the whole setup. Like there was just this like super psychological freaky little vibe going on. Even, I mean, and that's always kind of going on in the show anyway, but even
Yeah,
more so, they had that tension build. Just almost every single piece about this episode felt like The Shining to me, or a lot like The Shining.
there
um
was a lot of that there. Where
and I also,
is
one thing I will say though, that given that, I mean, Boone seems a little bit off the deep end, and he has from the minute that we've seen him. Like he just seems like not everything is totally right there, and makes you a little bit jumpy around him, or at least makes me a little jumpy around him. Like he's so happy and kind of a little too innocent. So that always felt a little bit weird to me about his character, but
Well, Anna and Rose have never trusted this guy. I mean, they tried to kill him a couple
right.
episodes ago, right?
Right, but just these three have been in this place, this whole world for so long, and even they're like, when they start to go into this big huge place, which again, I find it a little weird that this wouldn't have been overrun. Because some people have to know about it. It's a big enough lodge. That clearly people used to go to it in the past. So that felt kind of strange to me. But even they go and they get to the lodge, and they're running around. They're making a lot of noise. They're doing
Yeah,
crazy
their
stuff.
sweep feels a little cursory. That doesn't like, because they don't check every door, and that actually comes up later in the episode. But I'm like, why didn't Rose and Anna insist on checking every door, every room? And it comes back later that there are actually unlocked doors, or maybe that happened later on. It's hard to tell because that's part of the mind fuckery of the episode.
Right.
But this place is actually called Nakota Lakeside Resort.
Nice.
It's in Alberta, and you can go there if you want to stay in a hotel that might give you terrible nightmares and might be haunted by the death of a major character.
Yeah. I don't know. You can also go to the hotel overlook place, I think, which I think is in Colorado. Um even though I think it was supposed to be
Upstate. I mean,
it was
it's Stephen King, so it's got to be Maine or
I
right,
think it was
like
supposed to be New Hampshire. There was a
New
specific
Hampshire.
place that it's based on.
Yeah.
But in any
So
case,
you're talking about how like people should have found this place before. It doesn't look like post-apocalyptically speaking, people have found this place because the beds are made. There's not enough mess, right? It's very
there's
clean.
also a lot of
But
supplies.
and yeah, and the exception to the cleanliness is kind of in Anna and Rose's suite. They take a suite, I think, at the end of the hallway, and there's luggage in there and some deflated balloons. But other than that, like every bed is made. There's no evidence of people here.
Right.
And that is very puzzling because clearly then people were here, staying here when things went bad, like
Right.
in the time before. And while there may, I'm putting this in air quotes, be zombies here, because that's like kind of a question mark for me with this episode. There may be a room with zombies in it. Or if that's happening in Anna's head, I'm not really sure. It's otherwise it feels completely pristine.
Right. And
It's very
again,
strange.
like the fact that there's so many supplies, there's a lot of food and so much food that it almost feels like, you know, like
Like a trap.
like a mirage, like a trap, like
Yeah.
something. And I mean, honestly, I kept waiting for something to happen, for a group to come out or something. Like it just felt like that was kind of strange. But no, I think ultimately it's just that this place somehow got missed. But
So to me, the biggest thing that happens in this episode thematically is like the balance of power between Rose and Anna
yep.
shifts from one to the other. And this is told in a couple different ways,
Mhm.
but significantly, it's when Anna chooses not to take a shower, which is a
Correct.
funny thing. She chooses not to take a shower if she chooses to stay up all night, just staring at the crack under the door for footsteps or like
Yeah.
light being interrupted by people walking past their hotel room door. I thought that this was actually extremely effective as
Mhm.
a piece of storytelling because this actor, what's her name, Zoe Marlette,
Mhm.
I think she's doing a great job as Anna. And I think that the storytellers here saying, all right, no, this girl is only in zombie survival mode. She's not going to let her guard down to take a shower. And like, in a way, she surpasses her mother during that overnight were in her like paranoia, and then the next day the things that happen the next day only kind of like carry that through, right?
So I would argue that the shift in the balance of power happened in the last episode when she intervened and wouldn't let Rose kill Boone.
Yeah, that's part of it too.
And I
You're
think
right.
that that plays into what then happens here.
But that, yeah,
So I
okay.
think that in that moment, she basically called out Rose for,
Being a psycho.
being crazy. And that's where it shifted. She like gently kind of moved into that role. And she's definitely taking the lead, even though ostensibly Rose is obviously still the parent and whatever. So, I think then even in again, the storytelling in this is just and without a ton of dialogue, again, it's just really impressive. And really just shows just the art of these they did such an incredible job with this show. But Rose and the whole scene between Rose and Anna in the room when they're talking about taking a shower was just incredibly revealing. And Anna basically saying, you might be in the happy grocery store in 28 days later right now, but I'm not,
Yeah.
like, which is exactly kind of how it plays out. And while, you could argue that Anna is definitely being a bit paranoid, obviously, she just doesn't feel like it's safe. She basically it takes the watch so that Rose can sleep. And so I think that from right there, we see a real shift in power dynamic, but also in the storytelling because there'd been a lot of focus on Rose before this. This is very much an Anna episode.
Yeah.
So we've got her kind of skulking around the lodge.
Her weird like screaming at her reflection
Yeah, that was.
silently. That's an odd bit of like that's some all work and no play kind of
Oh
stuff right
yeah,
there.
definitely.
uh but it's a slow moving episode for sure. It's a quiet episode. It kind of makes you listen to the sounds of the hotel, which I assume is a lot of Foley work, like the sounds of the pipes
Oh yeah,
gurgling and the
definitely.
footsteps in the hallway. and the banging of the doors. And there's a lot of like strong sound work going on here too, because it is such a quiet episode. And then when Spears shows up, it kind of takes a big turn, and there's a lot more dialogue and a lot more interpersonal sort of stuff going on. There's absolutely no sign of Brathwaite. And as the episode goes on, I think we can all assume that Brathwaite was a figment of his imagination. So I think you called that, HA, when we originally watched that episode, and I salute you.
Yeah, well, you know, I call them as I see them.
Yeah. Like I'm a little bit disappointed that that was the case. I was kind of hoping that he would have this like dude who was I liked that episode. I thought they had an interesting relationship. Of course, they had an interesting relationship. It was Spears talking to himself for for 45 minutes, but there's absolutely zero reference to this other than Spears talking about having been in the cult house and having the opportunity to do himself in, and saying I couldn't do it, not like that, not there.
Yeah,
The only thing he's not saying there is we, like, because he was there with Brathwaite in the scenes that we saw.
right.
I don't
So
know,
they
like,
didn't, I mean, it's pretty subtle. They didn't totally, I thought that they would do something to kind of indicate a closure of that and to indicate that that's exactly that it was, him
yeah.
in this bad way, but they kind of didn't go there other than they just kind of moved on. But I truly do think he was hallucinating and that this is indicative of, I mean, and you see the state he's in here and he definitely knows how close he is to death. And, um, he's sweating, I honestly think that there's a lot of relief that that he, is with Rose and Anna, and basically relief that he found them. And as we find later in the episode, why there is that relief. Um, but, keep in mind that he doesn't have any contact. Like he knows that he got shot and that they left him. But other than that, doesn't really have any, has kind of been out wandering in the world until this point, and then to find them and be reconnected with them. I mean, it has to feel to him like some kind of reckoning, some kind of a, ending. But it's again just a really cool bit of storytelling. I do wish they had implied a little bit more of that, but they kind of don't need to, right?
Yeah, there's some stuff that him and Rose have to kind of try and figure out.
Mhm.
She, I think, feels a little bit guilty about having left him in the ditch, but she also has that dialogue later where she's
Mhm.
like, "It's crystal clear. It's just her. If anybody else can take a hike." But I think the way she's looking at him and the way she reacts when Anna finally does what she does suggests that she still has deep feelings for this man who saved her life and was her protector in the early days of the apocalypse.
Well, and I mean, I do think that the cool bit of revelation between them, it's like, yeah, she did what she did. She does feel bad about it, but I think he also understands. So,
Because and he uses the phrase, he says bygones, which was a callback to the Brathwaite stuff too,
yep.
right? But I also appreciated that he just forgave her, and he also has a bit of dialogue where he's talking about his mother calling to him to get up out of the ditch to go find and to go repent.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if this is some part of that too. I think there's way more of what we were saying, that he's really just trying to find somebody who's going to put him out of his misery, though he doesn't have to do it himself, and that's the greatest relief. It's not so much about him making up for past sins anymore,
Maybe
because
a
I don't
little.
know
I
how he
mean, I
could.
don't know that he can, but I mean, look, remember he did save Rose, so I think he was already kind of on that redemption path anyway.
True, true.
But I do think that the whole point, I think, of his whatever it might be with Brathwaite was about finding forgiveness, which leads into the whole dialogue between him and Rose, and then honestly between him and Anna. But it is a really, again, such a fantastic cast. Both scenes, the one with him and Rose and then the ones with him and Anna, are just so impressive.
Yeah,
And then there is the scene with the dinner table, which is very much a Last Supper, even the way it's set up, the way it's filmed. I think there's a bit of a debate about who is Christ in this particular scenario, but it is really done so well. Just cannot say enough good things about it. And then the tension and undertones and the things that are not being said are just incredibly powerful.
And the things that are being said, like Anna not pulling her
No,
punches and just saying you're dying, and Rose is like, oh, that sound, that's rude, don't say that or something. Is like Anna
right.
is calling it how she sees it, and follows through with that later when Spears basically asks her to kill him, even though she has a hard time with it. It's not like she's a complete psycho.
Right. And I mean, look, and I think that this is the thing, is that again, this is the power shift. Like Anna is like, yeah, we can't live in this fantasy world because he's dying, and if he's dying, then he is a danger to us. And also there is a level of you kind of in this world, and much like in The Walking Dead, like if you care about people really, then they don't want to be out there doing this. Like you have to take care of business for them, and that is also what you do for the people that you care about. I don't know if that's totally where Anna's coming from, although I do think she clearly cares about Spears. But she also is smart enough to know that her mother is not going to be able to do this, even based upon that conversation around the dinner table, because her mom doesn't want to admit that he's dying, right?
Her mom has gone into like domestic mode and
Right,
is
making
baking
a
chocolate
pie.
cakes. I mean, she's baking chocolate cakes with a Glock on the kitchen counter, so it's not like
Right,
she's 100% in like Carol wearing a cardigan in an
right. But
Alexandria sort of thing. But
she's definitely in a caretaker mode.
yeah,
So, you know. So anyway, I just thought this was just a really good um bit of storytelling, filmmaking.
what was also interesting here was the way that like there's so much laser focus and intensity between Rose and Spears and Anna, and then Boone is in the room
Oh gosh.
drunk, just kind of fluttering around and laughing and saying silly things and listening to Spears and hitting on Spears.
Yeah.
Very strange, but choices he's making. But Boone is a harmless character, and that's kind of interesting to see in this show too.
Well, Baboon also is living in La La Land. He wants people to help protect him. He also wants to pretend like things aren't as bad as they are. He trusts people way too much, and we see that is his downfall. Ultimately, it was only a matter of time. Um, so I don't know. He's like, and yeah, he's the oddly clueless character that is just sort of fluttering around in a strange way. When the serious stuff is going on between these three characters, it actually is a pretty interesting dynamic.
It is an interesting dynamic, and him and Spears. Spears is saying I should stay here forever because he knows that he's going to die here.
Yep.
But Boone is like, well, we got like 40 days of propane and at least that much of food, and maybe we should stay here. And Anna's all like, well, we got to get to the airplane, get to the airport, and go somewhere else. And Spears is like,
Where
why?
and why? Yeah.
What's And that is an important question to ask. I don't feel like it gets asked enough. I feel like I would like to see Anna and Rose have that conversation about
Right.
where are we going, and what is it going to be like there that we think it's going to be any different from everywhere else we've been.
Right. I mean, we see, I don't know, it just maybe just having a goal keeps them going too, because otherwise, then are you giving up? Because Spears clearly is, because he has to. So there's that question too. But that definitely leads us into the next episode.
But before we get
with the
there,
one really
Spears,
big finale.
there's a big finale, but Spears leading into the big finale, Spears's almost last words to Anna are, "Don't ever leave your mama.
Yep.
Never. You take care of her." And that definitely comes back full circle to one of the final scenes of this season. And I'm glad that they kind of put that in there. And I like that might be rattling around in Anna's head as she goes into the airport. But when they arrive at the airport in the beginning of the next episode, the plane. Actually, there's a cold open with Nasri giving his weird speech when he's all beat up looking and you don't know who he's talking to, but you hear bad things are happening, and he's like, "We should just open those doors." Gives you a frame of mind of his.
Well, and he's looking pretty rough.
He's looking very bad. Not like
I
fatal.
almost didn't recognize him at first.
It's his red coat. You always recognize the coat.
Right. But before we get to that, I mean,
But Rose and Ed are like not in a good place. Also, at the end of the last episode, Boone had run away from them
well,
because he's decided that Anna is a psycho, and maybe that's fair. He was passed out drunk and didn't hear any of the conversation between Anna and Spears before she shot him
he
in the head.
didn't. I mean, we also have to remember that Rose almost shot him then
Yeah.
the information that he's working from is that it's probably not a good idea to be around these two ladies.
Yeah.
So, it is a hard scene between Anna and Spears. And I will say that she did what she had to do. I don't think that I think it really made her feel horrible, but I think she knew that she had to do it. And I think he was grateful for it. And the other thing is that Rose did not hear the conversation between the two of them. So she has been in denial. And so to her, she thinks like Anna's totally sort of, I don't know. I think she's feeling guilty because she betrayed Spears in the first place. And then now this happened and she feels like somehow this could have been prevented, but obviously he was definitely, I mean, I think they kept it, they waited a little too long if you ask me, but Anna basically took care of business and she is now the primary power person in this whole dynamic. So
yeah, because when Rose runs into that room just after the gunshot, Anna looks at her and just says, "We're leaving," like total control. And then the next scene, they've left. So Rose is clearly listening to Anna, doing what she's told, but it's not 100% there because at the beginning of the next episode, as they're arriving at the airport, Anna is still trying to persuade Rose that she did what she did because he was dying.
Right.
Rose isn't hearing it. Anna says, I just don't want to stay in one place so I can rot like dad, which is, fighting words. And also a callback to episode 1, season 1. Rose says, "You watch your mouth." And Anna says to her, "Why don't you make me?"
Yeah, something crazy like that.
These are fighting words. And then Zombie Boone shows up and they're off. And that's the end of conversation time, really.
Yeah, and then they do the same timey-wimey thing that they've done in other episodes with this episode. So there's a lot of
back and forth.
There's a lot of back and forth getting from one place to another. I think that I'll admit to you, it did get a little tiring here and there with this. And I still don't totally I think that they lost their way a little bit with some of the storytelling in this episode, but I do think it ended up in the right weird place.
But I
I
have a number of questions by the end of this episode, but I didn't have any problem with the back and forth time stuff that they did within this episode.
Oh, I didn't have a problem with the time stuff. I just thought that some of the way they went or where they finally ended up, and maybe it's that these characters finally made it to the airstrip and it's then kind of like, well, then what? Right.
Right.
So
there's a cool overhead drone shot after Rose and Anna first evade Zombie Boone.
Mm-hmm.
And you can see in that scene where he runs away from them that he's been shot in the back.
Right.
And so you're like, did they do that? We don't know yet. That's kind of interesting. But there's a cool drone shot right after that where you get to see that there's 3 distinct groups of people all kind of walking around the airport. I thought that was really cool.
It was very video game gritty, right?
Yeah. And you're not sure, like, are these the people who are working at the airstrip? But it turns out, no, they're all just people that we already know.
Yep.
Because we get to see 2 of the women from Mance's crew. Turns out their names are Natalie and Jace. I didn't know their names until this scene. And they run into Zombie Boone. Mance has been following them, it turns out, and saves them and goes to shake their hands. And it's like Mance goes through this insane character arc in this episode, or maybe it's been since a couple episodes ago. When we first meet him, he's kind of like a merciless gang leader. He's threatening people like a alpha dog. And then he goes through all those shootouts and raids and carrying crates up the side of a mountain. And now he's like this guy who's extending his hand in friendship to people. It's an interesting turn. I don't know that the show has earned that for him.
Maybe I felt like that we must have missed something. I felt like I agree with you. I think it got there a little too quickly. However, maybe it's just that they finally are there. Things are so stripped down, kind of really hopeless. And that's where he is right now. He's like, it's not even worth it to do anything other than this. And we're here and we're going to try to survive, though, He
doesn't say any of that, of course, because the show doesn't do dialogue.
But that's kind of how
you can read all of that into it. Sure. Like he was the sort of leader of about 40 people. And now there's just these 2 women who are all that are left. Yeah.
Right. And then we've got the other team, which, they've always kind of had their strange dynamic.
Talking about Nasri's son and Sophie.
Yep.
Yeah. And we don't really know. Well, I mean, we can guess that they're there, but we don't see them until after they've shot at Natalie and mortally wounded her. Jace does not do fight or flight the right way, despite Mance encouraging her to leave. And this is seconds after his conciliatory handshake. And so then he's got 2 zombies and Boone. So now there's 3 zombies. And then we do the scene with Nasri's son, Sophie, Anna, and Rose. Anna and Rose immediately fall into their old pattern of I'll take Jack, I'll take Queen, and let's hide your ammo. We're going to play a scam. And it's going to be like they have great chemistry. So the last dialogue we had with them was Anna saying, "Why don't you make me?" Like it's so they're working on these grooves of their relationship. And I do kind of enjoy the fact that they can do that so quickly in this show. But also we see that Rose is like not a good person in the apocalypse. Nope. I mean, but there's all this leads me to one of my big questions for the season is there a history with Nasri that we don't know about in this group? It never gets answered.
It never gets answered. It feels like there is, but it never gets answered. So again, I feel like
it's unclear if they recognize each other when they all come out from behind the car. It's not like Sun is saying, "Hey guys, it's me, Sun. Remember me?"
Oh no, Sun's got a great poker face.
It's really strange. But they basically wheedle their way into Nasri's group. Sort of, they're kind of still negotiating it based on this exchange of food. When the 3 zombies show up, and they're unable to kill any of them with their assault rifles.
Also, by the way, that is one of the things that I'm, it kind of felt like this is part of what I was talking about. Like, it seems unlikely that this particular group would be unable to kill them, but cool.
The show goes back and forth. Like, some people, as we see later in this episode, are able to just take care of business. And when Spears was out in the woods, he killed 2 or 3 at least in the dark. Yeah. Unless that was all in his head.
Well, true. But
then they end up in the hangar, and Rose tries to pull a fast one and gets caught out. And then it's Spirited Guy and his 2 friends.
Yeah.
And the 2 other operators. And I guess we've already had the flashback where we find that Boone was actually killed by them. And this is a huge, it's not a huge issue for the episode, but it's like, it's the reason why they're in all the trouble that they're in, is because the bearded guy from several episodes ago makes that decision and thinks it's a good idea to have a zombie running around where they are.
Right, which is exactly what caused all the
everything falls apart because of that decision. Yeah.
Is because of that decision.
Because it turns out that they're all terrible at killing zombies, and they should know this, right?
Well, agreed. And also, it just never is a good idea to leave one of them running around for so many reasons. One is that, they're dangerous and they can be hard to kill, and they're in a spot where it's difficult to really get away from them. Secondly, they're really loud. So when others are created, they get called over by all this weird, crazy noise. So, you basically have it's just so dumb. And had they not done this, and had they basically sort of, I don't know, they could have just waited for the plane to come or tried to figure out what they were doing from there. Also, Boone is the only one, Boone was a person that worked at this airport, had knowledge of it. So to kill him is kind of a dumb thing anyway, but
yeah,
cool.
So bearded character does not get a lot of development. He has some dialogue. He clearly was the leader of that group of 3 in the crate episode. He has more dialogue in this episode. And they kind of go back and forth between showing him as benevolent and just like a guy bent on revenge and without a lot of thinking about what he's doing. Killing Boone, obviously bad move. He's trying to fix his buddy's fingers. He's telling Rose and Anna and Sun and Sophie, "We can't take all of you on the plane. We're just going to take the 2 best." These are good things in theory, right?
Yeah.
He's not just killing everybody. He's making balanced-ish decisions some of the time, but then he's also completely focused on beating up Nasri for making him feel like a dog, even though he was the guy who straight up murdered Nasri's best friend at the crate.
Right.
Maybe not best friend. Maybe I'm overselling that, but still, like,
One of
there.
his
So
allies. One of his
to
allies.
me, there is a writing problem here with this bearded guy and his motivations and the way that he is conducting himself in the hangar, because beating up Nasri serves zero purpose.
So this is again, this is like the storytelling piece that I was most bothered by, because it was hard for me to sort of understand. Like, I feel like they have bigger fish to fry, right?
Yeah.
Nasri is the least of their problems, and while he may be something that they have to deal with at some point, there's enough going on that if they had basically decided, okay, this is like, we're all here, we have these things running around, let's just take care of this, right? And like, if we band together and do this, then we have more of a chance of survival. And every single one of these people has been a survivor. They made it to this point. And so despite, and I think honestly, like, I think the point of this particular storyline was to like basically have a contrast to where Spears got, and that whole conversation between him and Brathwaite about bygones, and to show that there were people not quite there and that are kind of continuing this destructive lifestyle. Honestly, I think it's a commentary on human nature, and the good actors and the bad actors, and that kind of thing, and what people are ultimately willing to do, and things that don't make sense and ultimately cause their own destruction. So a lot of self-destructive behavior going on. And the whole, it's painful just even to watch the scene where they're beating up Nasri, and to see the other people witnessing it, and Nasri's feelings about the fact that they let it happen. But what are they supposed to do, right? Like I don't know how they help him.
No, and I don't think that he's mad that they didn't help him. So then after they send out a guy to be on watch outside the hangar makes also no sense, and he gets turned, and then he comes inside and it turns everybody else. But the ladies and Nasri get out of the hangar. So that's Sophie, Sun, Anna, and Rose. And Rose now has a flare pistol that Anna had found inside the hangar, but Nasri has recovered an assault rifle.
Yep.
And this is when they go back to that cold open, and he's talking about his speech, and the speech includes words like, we could have made it on that plane if everyone just did what they were told. I told you this would happen, or things that he says. There is no dialogue before they get ambushed by the zombies and end up in the hangar that reflects what he's talking about in his speech. They had no instruction giving between Nasri and Rose. And that's who he's pointing the gun at, is Nasri, Rose, and Anna. Sorry, Nasri is pointing the gun at Rose and Anna. And he's talking about a conversation that they'd had that they never had. And I'm just like, okay, is this just because he got beaten up and he doesn't remember how things went? He has every right to be mad at her because he saw that she pulled a gun on him.
Right
Before they all got rolled up by the other group. But it's like the speech does not reflect how things go.
So
I'm wondering if there's like history there where he maybe made that speech before the season started.
Maybe we have to look. Maybe there is some reference that we're going to here. I don't know, but agree with you. It didn't seem to totally. And again, I feel like we might be missing something like that we should have been picking up on.
I don't know that we're missing it so much as I think that this was a hole in the script or in the storytelling. And there aren't a lot, but this show tries to do so much with so little that I think it's kind of inevitable. But this was, to me, an issue for this episode. Yeah. So, that is what it is. Everybody else inside the hangar has been turned into, including two of Nasri's former friends who were also like eagerly beating him up.
Yep.
And we saw he didn't always treat his people well. Like he shot that one guy in the house fight when he didn't seem to be having any bites on him.
Yeah.
So maybe, like, I think, like you were saying, the human nature, like the ebb and flow of these alliances, like what Sophie was in Mance's crew and then joins Nasri's, or was she always in Nasri's but was a mole?
Yeah.
Again,
hard to tell.
Don't know.
But
it does seem like there's a lot of shifting alliances.
Taking all of that aside, sort of the running chase things that happen in this, the one with is it Mance who does that crazy?
Mance kills 8 zombies.
Yeah,
9.
like it's this crazy running, and I was going to bring this up with the Kelsey Flowers cardio, Mance gets the award for cardio. I like this
Yeah,
whole
Mance is the new
crazy,
Lance.
like also Lance.
Yep.
Anyway, like I felt like that was deliberate, but that was some pretty incredible choreography and filmmaking there. Really, really impressive. And just when you think it's over, it just continues. So that was really kind of a cool part of this episode. And then once we get through all this stuff, which again, I felt like some of this could have been better presented. And I still feel like maybe certain things were cut, which was why there were holes, but maybe not. But in any case, we get to the really big piece of this episode, which is that, Rose has gotten her hands onto a flare gun and she causes this explosion. And I think, part of me was like, did she not understand? Or maybe she fully understood what might happen here. But basically, she and Nazari are so injured by this that, and maybe it's meant to be a distraction or whatever, but the explosion itself and her injuries from this are rough. The effects are impressive. Like she's got a compound fracture.
Yeah.
Her ear, like she can't hear anything. And then Anna and Sun have managed to get away. And she's basically like telling Anna, like, look, I'm done for, leave. And she says that to them and basically threatens to shoot herself so that Anna doesn't have to, basically. But I don't know that she even has anything left in that gun. And basically that's like the thing. It's like, so her whole thing is that Anna survives, the power is shifted. And, I was like, there's no way Anna gets on this plane and that's exactly what happens. But there's some justification that Sun, who we've been following throughout this whole thing, does get on the plane. I was just scared it was going to take a really bad turn while she was in it. But
Yeah, the end with Sun and the plane is another thing, but I like there's also just I feel like a strong silent judging from the show about Rose and Nasri and their enmity for one another and the standoff that they end
yep.
up having at the end of the episode after they both regain consciousness and they're so banged up, lying on the floor pointing guns at each other. And finally Anna returns to them and is like, oh yeah, oh god, what am I going to do? And you're not sure if she's going to leave them, but she gets a car, comes back. This is like kind of a big cliffhanger for the end of the season in a way. Like she's sitting there idling in the car. The two of the Rose and Nasri they kind of put their guns down and they look exhausted, which they should be. But where's it going to go from here? I thought that was kind of an interesting cliffhanger to leave the show there. Clearly, you've got the one with Mance, who has just done the incredible, because all of those improvised weapons, oh my gosh, what an amazing
right?
sequence. And when you're talking about your resets and how long it takes to shoot something, like that is not just a running sequence. That is all of those weapons that he makes, and he turns around and slamming
like
people.
The Jackie Chan of this. Like,
oh, it's absolutely, yeah, it's a good comparison. Like, yeah, except Jackie Chan with fatalities.
right.
And he manages to kill all of them, including Boone finally when he recovers a handgun, but he's looking completely wasted and ragged. But so by the end of this episode, you've got Sun's on the plane. She's flying away. We could talk about that in a second, but we got Anna, Nasri, Rose, and Mance, even though he's not with them.
Mm-hmm.
I'm hoping that if there's a season 3,
that he will
we
show
get those
up.
4.
Agreed.
And that they can put aside their differences maybe and work together on some sort of plan B,
Yeah. You
don't have high hopes.
Well, I'm worried that they're going to do the same thing with Mance that they did with Lance, because I don't think that that's an accident. But there's that, and I do think that Anna is basically like, I mean, look, Rose and Naziri are so injured. I don't think they're coming back from that. Clearly, maybe.
Yeah, a compound fracture is. They'll need a Deus Ex Machina in the form of like a surgeon to fix that
antibiotics, something.
Yeah.
But I just don't think those two are, I think they're done. And I think that was what Anna was unfortunately having to do, despite what Spears told her and despite her efforts. She just, I think, has to go. And I think Rose is okay with that, which is the whole reason she wanted her on the plane in the first place. But, they kind of left it there. But then Sun, the one kind of bright spot of this whole thing, and I really thought it was going to turn ugly for her. Like I thought somehow the pilot was going to turn around and be this like somebody that was so injured or something like bad happening, but instead it's like actually the one little bright light here, and he actually speaks Korean. Um, and she hasn't been understood this entire this entire like first two seasons. Like it's been poor Sun running around trying to make herself understood. And just what a relief it is that somebody can talk to her, which is just like that was kind of a cool little addition.
Yeah.
So, I
No,
like
that
that.
that you feel so good for her in that scene. And she's been also this like moral compass in
Mhm.
some scenes that we've seen, and she's been a prisoner and she's had a really rough season. So it does make a huge difference to see her that
But
happy.
she is the only one that ultimately has been untouched. So I guess like she is the one that's basically still trying to get in the way of people hurting each other. She's the one
Yep.
that still tried to stay with Spears even though he was injured, and Rose and Anna like abandoned him. Like all along she has been that compass, and has not swayed, like she has not wavered from that.
But how is she different from Boone?
mm, I think in some ways she's different from Boone because she is not, because I think Boone is a little off his rocker. Um,
I mean, they all should be, right?
right. But in any case, I just liked the whole thing where she's flying off with him is great, except we all know that, there is no panacea, there's no real escape from this. Because even that sort of is indicated, like he's bringing her in, but what's the end game here? We know ultimately we know it's Z Nation, although again, I don't like to draw any sort of connection with those two things, but at least for the moment, she is safe and she's able to talk to somebody, and it's just an incredible. I loved that part of this whole
Yeah.
story.
That is nice. It does leave me with lots more lingering questions, such as why did the plane land at the airstrip? They didn't have time to refuel. Nobody got out of the plane. They left their engines running. There's no way he could have seen what was going on the ground as he came into land. He didn't circle.
Right.
So I am like, that doesn't make a lot of sense. He puts down the ladder so that whoever was getting on could get on, and then he takes off immediately. He doesn't check to see if they're bitten.
Right.
These are really kind of weird decisions for the airplane to make.
Um,
Secondly, why has the airplane been dropping boxes of guns on the floor in Alberta?
well, the
Like
other thing
what?
I was going to say, it's one guy in there. I thought there would be at
Yeah,
least two, because don't you need somebody to
to
help?
do airdrops. Yeah, you need to have people to push those cases, those crates
Right.
out. Yeah.
But so that felt weird to me. And it didn't, so that left some questions. But
So, like I said, not a perfect season, but that 100% on Rotten Tomatoes is a good sign that the critics like it. Audience was like 65 because people going to be people. But I think it was an interesting ending to the season. I really hope that they come back, but it's also exhausting to watch. I don't know if it must be so much more exhausting to make.
yep. And again, not perfect, but overall, really, really enjoyed the season. I thought it was honestly, I love the first season, but I think this was stronger. I think that they really outdid themselves with storytelling, filmmaking, all of it. I would absolutely watch a season 3. So, let's see what happens, though they may have run out of storytelling in this. Who knows? I didn't see that it got renewed.
It hasn't been yet, I
So,
think, but it was several weeks to months after the first season that they decided they were doing another one. So we'll see.
we'll see. But I also, look, the other thing is that I think if it ended here, that would be okay too. So, I think they did a phenomenal job on all of this, and I highly
Yeah.
recommend this season, especially to anybody who is into this. Really well done. And maybe if we do get a season 3, I'll be Ron and Mance will survive, which would be super.
Yeah, that would be cool. But I think that brings us to the end of Black Summer season 2. And I think we've said it all. We've left it all out on the table, and that's great. Next time, H.A. Conrad, what would you like to talk about? Do you want to do Ashen of the North?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay. And so that's what we will bring back next time we get together here on Reanimated for episode 299, approaching a big milestone. And if you want to let us know what you thought of the final 2 episodes or the whole season, Black Summer season 2, get at us on Twitter, Reanimated PCast. Our email is reanimatedpodcast@gmail.com. And of course, our show notes are going to be on reanimatedpodcast.com. So let us know what you think.
Yep. And until next time, ciao.
All righty. Bye.
Bye.